Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The King of New York, the golden boy who had snatched every trophy, every scholarship, and every accolade from my hand since kindergarten, was currently shivering in a dumpster behind a dive bar in Queens, fighting a stray cat for a half-eaten bagel. I didn't step on the brakes because of pity. I slammed them because the sheer, unadulterated shock nearly sent my Aston Martin spinning into a lamppost. I sat there for a moment, the wipers slapping frantically against the torrential downpour, watching him. Silas Thorne, the heir to the Thorne dynasty. The man whose picture had graced the cover of Forbes last month under the headline, The Untouchable Billionaire. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a drowned rat, his designer suit shredded, his face bruised, and his eyes, those arrogant ice-blue eyes that had always looked down on me, wide with a feral, desperate hunger. I rolled down the window, the electric hum of the glass the only sound before the thunder clapped. "Well?" I shouted over the rain, a cruel smirk tugging at my lips that I couldn't suppress. "If it isn't the Crown Prince. Finally found a throne that suits you." Silas looked up. He didn't sneer. He didn't fire back a witty retort about my second-place status. He just flinched, clutching his side, and whispered a single word that shattered my composure. "Help!" The drive to my penthouse in Manhattan was silent, save for the squelch of his wet clothes against my Italian leather seats. I told myself I was doing this to gloat. I told myself that seeing Silas Thorne, the man who had effortlessly eclipsed my entire existence, reduced to a trembling mess, was the victory I had been chasing for 20 years. I was Julian Vane, the almost valedictorian, almost the youngest partner, almost the best. Silas was the reason for the almost. When we entered my apartment, a sleek, minimalist fortress of glass and steel that I had designed myself, he hesitated at the door. He looked at the pristine white marble floors, then at his muddy, blood-caked shoes, and began to back away. "Get inside, Thorne," I snapped, tossing my keys into a crystal bowl. "You're dripping on the hallway runner, and that's vintage." I can't pay you," he rasped, his voice sounding like it had been dragged through gravel. I don't have access to my accounts, my cards, my ID. It's all gone." "Clearly," I said, eyeing his ruined state. "Go to the guest bathroom. Second door on the left. Don't touch the silk towels." As the shower began to run, I poured myself a stiff whiskey and paced the living room. Logic dictated I call the police or the news. The disappearance of Silas Thorne would be the story of the decade. But something stopped me. The bruise on his jaw was shaped like a boot heel. The fear in his eyes wasn't just humiliation. It was the look of prey. When he emerged, he was wearing a pair of my old sweatpants and a t-shirt that was too tight across his broad chest. He looked smaller without the armor of his three-piece suits, yet infuriatingly handsome even with a split lip. "Talk," I commanded, leaning against the kitchen island, swirling my drink. Silas wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor, his hands trembling. I was set up. Hostile takeover. But not the legal kind. My stepmother. She hired people. They froze the assets, flagged my passport as stolen, and sent cleaners to my penthouse. If I use a credit card, they find me. If I show my face in Midtown, I'm dead. And you came to Queens? I ran until I couldn't run anymore. I took a sip of whiskey, the amber liquid burning pleasantly. "So the prince is a pauper. And a fugitive. I need a place to stay," he murmured, the shame radiating off him in waves. "Just for a few weeks, until I can get evidence to the board. I have a fail-safe key, but it's in a vault that requires a retina scan, and right now there's a bounty on my head. Why should I help you?" I stepped closer, invading his personal space. I wanted to see him squirm. "You've made my life a living hell for 2 decades. You humiliated me at the Architectural Digest Awards last year." "I'll do anything," Silas said, his voice dropping to a hush. He finally looked up, and the intensity in his blue eyes pinned me in place. I have no money to offer you, Julian. But I can work. I'll clean. I'll cook. I'll run your errands. I will be your servant, your assistant, your shadow. Just don't throw me out. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a sudden, suffocating tension. Silas Thorne, begging? Offering servitude? A dark, twisted satisfaction uncoiled in my belly. Anything? I asked softly. Anything. Fine, I said, setting my glass down with a sharp clink. You sleep on the couch. You wake up at 5 a.m. You do exactly what I say. And Silas. Yes. If you break anything, I'm taking it out of your hide. The first week was a study in surrealism. I expected him to fail. I wanted him to fail. I wanted to watch the golden boy struggle with a vacuum cleaner or burn toast. But Silas Thorne, infuriatingly, was perfect at being destitute. He didn't just clean, he organized. I came home on the third day to find my chaotic drafting studio rearranged by color and frequency of use. He cooked with the proficiency of a Michelin star chef, utilizing the meager ingredients in my fridge to create risottos and glazes that made my mouth water. Where did you learn to do this? I asked one evening, watching him chop vegetables with terrifying precision. He had his sleeves rolled up, exposing forearms corded with muscle. Boarding school didn't teach survival, he said without looking up. But summers at my grandfather's vineyard in Tuscany did. He believed manual labor built character. He hated my father. We have that in common, I muttered. Silas paused, the knife hovering over a red pepper. I never hated you, Julian, I scoffed, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. Please, you mocked my thesis. I critiqued it because it was brilliant but safe. I wanted you to push harder. You stole the Omnicorp contract right out from under me. I bid lower because I knew the board was corrupt. If you had taken that contract, they would have scapegoated you for the embezzlement scandal that broke 3 months later. I took the hit to the reputation so you wouldn't go to jail. I froze. The Omnicorp scandal. The one that had nearly tanked Thorne Enterprises stock for a quarter. I had always assumed he was just greedy. You're lying? I whispered, but my voice lacked conviction. Silas turned, wiping his hands on a towel. He looked tired. The shadows under his eyes were deep, but his gaze was steady. Believe what you want. Dinner is in 10 minutes. That night, the dynamic shifted. It wasn't just master and servant anymore. It was two men circling each other in a cage, the history between us transforming from a wall into a bridge. Weeks bled into a month. The master-slash-servant game began to lose its ironic edge and morphed into a domestic intimacy that terrified me. I found myself rushing home from work, not to bark orders, but because the apartment felt cold without him. One rainy Tuesday, I came home soaked and exhausted after a site visit went wrong. My shoulder was throbbing from where a scaffolding pole had grazed me. Silas was at the door before I even dropped my keys. He didn't say a word. He stripped my wet coat off, his hands lingering on my shoulders. He saw the wince. Sit, he ordered. The authority in his voice was back. Not the imperious CEO tone, but something guttural and protective. I'm fine, Silas. I said sit. I sat. He retrieved the first aid kit and a bag of ice. As he tended to my shoulder, his fingers were gentle, reverent. He was kneeling between my legs, his face inches from mine. I could smell him, rain, expensive soap, and the musk of a man who had been working hard. Why are you doing this? I asked, my breath hitching as his thumb brushed my collarbone. You're hurt, he said simply. I'm your jailer, your rival. You're the only person who opened the door, Silas replied. He looked up, his eyes searching mine. And maybe I got tired of winning games I didn't care about. Maybe the only competition that ever mattered was getting your attention. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. This is a bad idea, Silas. Probably, he whispered. He leaned in. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded him of his place. Instead, I grabbed the back of his neck and crashed my lips against his. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was 20 years of rivalry, jealousy, and repressed longing detonating in a single moment. It was teeth and tongue and a desperate need to consume. Silas made a low noise in his throat, a sound of surrender that drove me wild. He pulled me off the sofa and onto the rug, his servant persona vanishing as he took control with a natural dominance that made my head spin. For a man who was supposedly broke and broken, he kissed like he owned the world, and specifically me. The bubble had to burst. I knew that, but I didn't expect it to explode so violently. It was 2 months in. The Thorne family drama had quieted down in the press. Rumors were circulating that Silas was dead. I had grown complacent. I had fallen in love with the domestic ghost haunting my apartment. I came home early to surprise him with takeout from his favorite Thai place. The apartment was dark. Silas. Silence. I walked into the living room and stopped dead. Silas was there. But he wasn't wearing my sweatpants. He was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. He was standing by the window, speaking into a sleek, encrypted satellite phone. Yes, the merger is secure. My stepmother's assets have been seized. The board is convening in an hour. I'll be there. He hung up and turned around. When he saw me, his expression didn't falter, but his eyes dimmed slightly. Julian. I dropped the Thai food. The smell of pad Thai hit the floor, nauseatingly pungent. You have a phone. You have a suit. My associates dropped them off via drone on the balcony an hour ago. The play is done, Julian. I've regained control. How long? I asked, my voice trembling with a rage so cold it burned. How long have you had access back? A week? 2. Silas hesitated. That hesitation was the dagger. 3 days. 3 days, I repeated. You've been playing house for 3 days while you were back on top. Why? To laugh at me? To see how long the idiot Julian would keep feeding the billionaire charity case. No, Silas stepped forward, reaching out. Because I didn't want to leave. Because for the first time in my life I was happy. I wanted 3 more days of being just Silas before I had to be Mr. Thorne again. Get out, I whispered. Julian, please. Let me explain. The danger was real. But, get out, I roared, grabbing a vase, one he had meticulously cleaned yesterday, and hurling it at the wall near his head. It shattered, shards of glass raining down like our fractured truce. Silas flinched, his mask of composure cracking. He looked at me with profound sorrow. I will fix this. I swear. You've beaten me at everything, Silas. I spat, tears stinging my eyes. Grades, business, life. Congratulations. You just beat me at breaking hearts, too. You win. Now get the hell out of my house. He left. The silence he left behind was deafening. 3 weeks later, the invitation arrived. It was heavy cream cardstock, embossed with gold leaf. The Thorne Foundation Annual Gala. It was the social event of the season. Usually I threw these in the trash. This one came with a handwritten note on the back. Please, S. I shouldn't have gone. My pride screamed at me to burn it. But my heart was a traitorous organ that hadn't stopped bleeding since he left. I arrived late. The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a sea of diamonds and black ties. I stood on the periphery, nursing a champagne flute, scanning the crowd. And then I saw him. He was on the dais, surrounded by sycophants and board members. He looked regal, untouchable, the god king of industry once more. He was laughing at something a senator said. It made my stomach turn. It was all a lie. The domesticity, the vulnerability, it was just method acting for a bored prince. I turned to leave, unable to stomach the sight. Ladies and gentlemen. A voice boomed over the speakers. The room went quiet. Silas was at the microphone. He looked out over the blinding lights, his eyes scanning the crowd frantically until they locked onto mine in the shadows. He froze. Then he smiled. It wasn't his CEO smile. It was the shy, tentative smile of the man who had made me risotto in his sweatpants. Tonight, Silas said, his voice echoing. I am supposed to announce the merger of Thorn Enterprises with the Omni Group, a move that would solidify my power for the next 50 years. The crowd murmured in anticipation. However, Silas continued, his eyes never leaving mine, I have realized recently that power is cold comfort when you come home to an empty house. I have spent my life winning races I didn't choose, against a rival who actually deserved to win. The murmurs turned to gasps. Julian Vane, Silas said clearly. Every head in the room swiveled toward me. The spotlight hit me, blinding and hot. For 20 years, I competed with you because you were the only one who made me feel alive. I admired you. I envied you. And recently, I deceived you. He stepped off the stage. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He walked toward me, ignoring the frantic whispers of his PR team. He stopped 3 feet away. What are you doing? I hissed, mortified. You're committing professional suicide. I'm liquidating the merger, Silas said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. I'm restructuring Thorn Enterprises into a non-profit trust. I'm stepping down as CEO. My jaw dropped. You're what? Why? Because the CEO of Thorn Enterprises can't date the CEO of Vane Architecture without a conflict of interest, he said, stepping closer. And because I promised you I would fix this. You're giving it up? I stammered. Everything? The money? The power? That's your identity, Silas. No. He reached out, taking my hand. His palm was warm, calloused from the work he'd done in my apartment. My identity is the man who knows how you take your coffee. The man who knows you talk in your sleep when you're stressed. I don't want the throne, Julian. I just want the architect. He dropped to one knee. The room erupted in shock. Camera flashes went off like strobes. I have nothing left to offer you but myself, Silas said, looking up at me with that same desperate honesty I had seen in the rain. I'm not faking broke this time. Without the company, I am actually unemployed. So I'm asking, is the position of assistant still open? I looked down at him. The arrogant boy I had hated. The broken man I had saved. The lover who had deceived me. And now, the fool who was burning down his empire for a second chance. I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth, unbidden. The position has been filled, I said, my voice shaking. Silas's face fell, devastation clouding his eyes. However, I continued, tightening my grip on his hand and pulling him to his feet. I am currently in the market for a partner. But be warned, I take 51% of the profits. Silas let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks. He pulled me close, ignoring the cameras, the gasps, and the scandal that would rock the morning news. Take it all, he whispered against my lips. I've already lost my heart to you anyway, and that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Silas surrender his empire for love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a rival who lied to you, even if they gave up billions to say sorry? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,